Hey guys, here's a peek at the Philco 60MB cabinet that I've been slowly refinishing. I'm just about at the point now where I can mask off the veneered areas and paint the trim black. But that's not what this video is about. I'm just using this as a segue to the main topic, which is another Philco radio that I just picked up yesterday, and it has similar styling. It came out about the same time. It has a suffix of MX, whereas this is an MB. I'm not sure exactly what those letters stand for. I think the M is for modern, not sure about the X and the B. At any rate, has the same type of black trim and brown mahogany veneer, and that would be what it's sitting on top of, which is a model 118MX. And just like the 60MB, I didn't know that this existed until basically I saw the Craigslist ad. I was not aware that there were really nifty looking, very Art Deco-y Philco radios that were out in around 34, 35. And now I happen to own two of them, and I'm very glad that I do because I love the styling on this thing. This, I guess, was introduced in late 34, but I guess you'd call it a 35 model. So I was kind of on the fence about picking it up because of the damage to the bottom of it. But on the flip side, because it's damaged, I got it at a fairly reasonable price, I thought, which was $60. The lower, maybe 10 inches or so, were clearly submerged, although the damage is a lot worse at that end than this end, but regardless, there's damage all around the bottom. It didn't really affect the grill cloth much, which seems to be the same as the 60MB, and that's a good thing because, so as far as I understand it, there was never any reproduction grill cloth made in this pattern. So I'm glad that's okay. I'm also very glad to have all the knobs and the escutcheons in great shape, as is this, which I wasn't sure if this was real or not. It turns out it is faux. That is not bird's eye maple or anything like that. That is a faux finish. There are some minor chips out here. I'm hoping I can just touch that up. Maybe with just clear lacquer, or maybe stuff with a little bit of yellow tint to it. I'm not sure. Also, some of this scalloped trim popped out along the bottom, as did a piece up front. But I don't think they'll be too hard to replicate. I think the biggest challenge to this cabinet by far is going to be this area. Sure, this can be glued and clamped down, but I'm going to have to feather in some veneer that matches the grain and then try to match the color, which is another drag because this finish is in pretty good condition, and I really don't want to refinish the whole thing, but from here down the finish is just gone. This is just bare wood, and I think it's going to be tough, but I'll give it a shot. Maybe I can kind of just lightly spray in some brown toner lacquer and kind of feather it into this and blend it in so it's not such a noticeable transition. Alright, so that is the cabinet, which, as I say, I think is just a really, really cool design. Now, what about the insides? Here's a look at the back side of the radio. And speaking of backs, that's one of the interesting features of this radio, is that it has a back. Most radios from the 30s did not. And in particular, this happens to be on upside down, so I'm rotating the camera so you can read it. It has the Philco echo absorbing screen on the back. Fortunately, it's slightly damaged, but I do have the pieces that broke out, so I can probably glue that back together. So it's a thin fiber board, and then a cloth interior. I guess that would, well, as they say, it absorbs echoes. We can get a peek at the speaker inside, which from a little bit I can see looks to be in great condition. As for the chassis, here's the tube lineup. I think it has a 78 RF amp into a 6A7 oscillator converter tube, 78 IF amp, and a 75 detector driving a type 42, which drives a 42 push-pull output. And it's basically a Class A amplifier, I understand. Puts out about 10 watts of real clean sound. Oh, and it has a shadow tuner. I really hope that's still good. Just like the one in my Philco 15DX, because I know how difficult it is to repair those. That's about all I know, other than that they said that they would use it periodically over the years, and it stopped working at some point. And I suppose one could plug this in. This appears to be the original power cord, and it's in quite good condition, other than a little bit of fraying on the outside cloth jacket here, and some electrical tape wrapped around here that might be hiding some more fraying. The rest of it's actually in really good condition. But I'm not just going to plug that in, of course, so I won't burn anything out. Also, the speaker wiring looks a little dubious. I want to do a couple more things in this video. I want to take the back off, get a better look at that speaker, see more about whether I can repair that damage. Right now, I'm going to answer my phone. I just removed the back from the set, so now I have to take a closer look at it. It's comprised of a piece of black fabric, not particularly thick, and then the fiberboard. And it looks like they used to be attached together by a wide strip of maybe contact adhesive, but it's long since failed and the cloth is completely separated now. Now, apparently these backs are often missing, so it's kind of nice to have it. Whether I can salvage this or not, if I do want to make a replica, I've got a template to go off of. How effective they were, no idea, but they patented it and they make a big deal out of it in the advertising, so I guess it serves some function. Alright, now here is the speaker. Field coil, of course. Looks to be in good condition. Field coil's loose. Imagine I can wedge some more cardboard in there, because I would expect with the speaker vibrating, it's not going to be too good to have that rattling around. And I've seen this before in a few speakers. There's like a dust cover down here, but I would have expected this to be on the top, not the bottom. So now it's kind of like catching debris that falls rather than shielding it from debris. On the other hand, seeing how long these speaker wires are, I don't think it'd be possible to rotate this 180 degrees. But then again, those wires kind of chewed up, so I don't know. Maybe some work was done, the wires were frayed, they shortened them, they had to rotate the speaker, or maybe this is the way it was always supposed to be. I really don't know. I'll have to rely on the opinions from somebody else who owns one of these. Clearly the writing's upside down. Oh, and it is very nice to have a chassis that has a socket for the speaker, because most of the Philcos I've worked on were hardwired. And yeah, I ended up unsoldering the wires inside here to get it over the workbench, and I had to reconnect them to test it on the bench. But here there's a socket, so I guess you loosen up the screw, rotate the piece of metal a little bit, and you can pull the plug out. The chassis looks to be in good shape. The one thing I immediately didn't like, though, one of the caps has been replaced. This, if this isn't the original Philco, at least this is what the original Philco cap would have looked like. It would have been this tall. And this, it's clearly a replacement. I'm not sure who made it. And And I can see that it's got red positive, negative black, blue positive, so there must be at least a 2-section cap in there. Now, as far as getting the chassis out, it doesn't mount the way I'm used to, which would be 4 bolts, one in each corner, coming through from the bottom of the chassis. But this is attached from the top. So we've got the usual Philco corner blocks, which are pretty hard, and the chassis seems to have bottomed out. Should be floating on these rubber mounts. And it looks like they have these little guides here to kind of keep them in position. But what's really holding it down is a screw. This one's not doing a very good job of holding it down because it's quite loose. But you actually detach it from the top with a flat-bladed screwdriver. So I'll endeavor to do that. So if I disconnect the speaker plug, take out 4 screws, pop the 4 knobs off on the front, I should be able to get this out. And hopefully those knobs won't present too much of a fight. Get that one off. 2 for 2. 3 for 3. Oh, I should say I also tried rotating these controls, and the power volume seems to operate okay. 4-position tone switch operates. This is the band switch. I could not move it. I didn't want to use too much pressure. I don't want to break anything, but it does seem to be seized up. And finally, the large tuning knob, and the tuning cap does seem to rotate as well. Alright. That doesn't happen too often. Alright, so take a few screws out, and hopefully this chassis will slide right out. I had noticed this label inside the cabinet right away when I inspected the set, but I never actually read it very carefully. It says, notice for correct operation, before placing this Philco radio in operation, remove chassis mounting bolts completely to allow the chassis to float freely on soft rubber corner supports. These bolts will be found under the bottom of blah 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 on X-type and cabinets with backs. These bolts will be found on top of the chassis shelf on either side of the chassis. It sure sounds to me like they're talking about these screws, and it sure sounds like these should have been removed way back when to allow this to float around, and they sure have not. This one was a little bit loose, but the other 3 are certainly tightened all the way down, so it sounds to me like for this set's entire life, it's quite possible that it was never floating the way it was supposed to, which I would imagine hindered its performance a little bit. The reason you want it to float is so the vibration of the speaker doesn't vibrate the chassis and cause problems with microphonics in the tubes or disturb the tuning capacitor. Those rubber mounts were practically fused down to the plywood interior, but with a little bit of wiggling I finally broke them loose and was able to pull the chassis out. So here it is. Looks fine from the top. Not that that's really worth a whole lot. Let's check out these tubes. I see they have labels on them. It's probably from the shop where they were purchased. Commonwealth Edison Co. No date on it though. And it is Philco branded. I suppose it's possible they are originals. And that label just might be from when this was serviced and they were tested. Same deal. Yeah, see there's a date, well I think it's a date of 7/1/42 down below. Oh, Aristocrat, yeah. Not a matched pair of tubes. Not to say they're not matched electrically, I just mean they're not the same brand. And I noticed before this is a Kenrad Type 80. Let's see about this other 42. That's a National Union, so got a whole variety of tubes in here. I'm not going to mess with the other ones just yet because they're behind shields and have caps on them, with wires going to them. I don't want to That's what that's. So I'm really curious about. Man, it's a big power transformer for a seemingly small chassis. It's a big old transformer. Alright. There's the shadow meter. Wow, this thing's dusty. I want to see if the what condition the tuning scale's in. It needs a little lubrication, I think. It's a bit warped, but it's uniformly warped, so it's all kind of curved in all around. At least I assume originally it was completely flat. And then again, who knows? Because it kind of rides against this, which is also bent and kind of conforms to the curvature of the dial scale. Hard to say. Have not worked on this type chassis before. And now what we've all been waiting for. What is underneath? Well, see some signs of repair. Not good. This is very stable on its side with the power transformer. Means I'll be able to work on it like this very easily. A few things strike me right away. One, I see a couple solar, I think they're called seal-tight caps that look like they're more modern replacements. I've seen those in TVs from the 40s. Whereas this looks like an original Philco cap, same with that. And I would have thought that this was some kind of ugly repair or kludge job, but on my 15DX I saw a couple instances of this too, where there were parts floating in free space where there's no tie point, so that may very well be how they did it originally. Other things that strike me are, this is one big old ugly power resistor. This, I believe, is the usual bias off the B plus supply, and the big filter cap grounds do not go to the chassis, they go to one end of this to provide some negative voltages for biasing the tubes. What this is for, I do not know. I sure hope both of them are good though. I would guess that maybe it has something to do with biasing the output tubes. It's part of the Class A operation I was reading about. And finally, this I found very odd. I knew there was a 4-section cap under here from my brief look at the schematic, but I thought it would be a metal box, like in the Philco 60 chassis I've restored, with non-polarized caps in it, like a big tar block. But this sure looks like an electrolytic can. 3 microfarad, 1 microfarad, 1 microfarad, and 2 microfarad. And this is DC working volts, so I think these are just really low value electrolytic caps. And that's a Philco cap, so I think it's original. Huh. Weird. I was kind of hoping it would be a box because those are easy to restuff. This doesn't look so easy. There's 4 sections in there. It looks like it'd be tough to deal with. Well, I suppose you could cut it open right here, restuff it, leave the wires attached, and then when you re-clamp it back, that would hide the seam. Anyways. Control. So that's the switch that seems to be seized up, and it's a fairly complex one too, so I want to be careful with that. There's the tone control. There's probably several caps inside this tar block here. And there's the power volume. Hard to say at first glance if that's original or not. Sure seems to be a common point of failure though. Most of my Philco radios, the power volume's been replaced, or they were bad and I had to replace them. And we have the usual Bakelite blocks all over, which are fairly easy to deal with. Alright, so should be a fun radio to work on for sure. I'm not going to do it right now because I got to finish out some other outstanding projects like this. Admiral sitting right here, and the mic caps did arrive for it. So I want to tackle these IF stages, hopefully get the sound to work, and finish this thing off this weekend. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this look at my latest acquisition, a Philco 118MX from 1935.